Okay, this is lesson 4, laying out the pattern on the fabric. So you see I've got my fabric laid out on my table and I already have it folded selvage edge to selvage edge. So you can see that this is the selvage edge and this is the selvage edge. So it's like kind of long and skinny. And the reason I did that is because that is what they told me to do in this picture. So I'm going to lay mine out like you will lay yours out. The kids' one is laid out slightly different, but I'm going to do it like yours so it's not very confusing, okay? Okay, so looking at the picture, we need to do number 1 goes in the top right corner, and with the long flat side kind of close to that little corner there. So I'm going to find my number 1, and here's my number 1. I have it laid out kind of generally in this kind of along that edge. When I was folding the fabric, I couldn't decide which side was the right side and which was the wrong side because it's woven fabric, so it kind of looks fine from either angle. So yours is probably the same. And now you can see this line right here is the grain of the fabric. So this should be like perfectly vertical. And luckily I have fabric that has a vertical line. So I'm going to use the vertical line as my guide. Kind of shimmy that so it's nice and parallel. I can see like a little bit of a vertical line here. So I'm going to use that to just be parallel. I could probably line it up perfectly, but all right, so that's my number 1 piece, just generally laid out. And then before I pin it in place, I just want to make sure I have the right kind of spacing for my number 2 piece. So in this picture, it has it like head to foot. My fabric is wide compared with the kids' sizing, so I can sort of shimmy one of them up a little, which will give me some extra fabric at the end. See, I've got like this little tail here. Can't see it very well, I guess. There it is. I've got a little extra fabric on the end that way I'll have like, maybe some spare. Okay, so I've got my number 1 in place. I decided to use that really clear vertical plaid line and just shift my pattern over to make it easy to get a nice good vertical line. And I have enough fabric here that I could shimmy the number 2 piece a little bit lower. So yours is going to go more like all the way to the end, I think. Okay. I've got a kid size pattern in 2 yards and you've got an adult size pattern in 3 yards. So it should all work out. I haven't lined this one up yet. The number 2 I haven't lined up because I want to get number 1 pinned down first. Okay, so I usually start pinning the corners or anywhere that there's a kind of a point, like here, and then all the way at the corner, just to get all of the sections pinned. And then I'll pin maybe every like 4 or 5 inches along the border. I like to pin facing outward like this and like this, like perpendicular to the cutting surface. You don't want to pin across the line because then your scissors have to go there. So you have to pin kind of in here. And then we'll be removing these pins anyway later once when we're ready to sew. Okay, so I've got the number 1 piece pinned in place. Here's a pin, there's a pin, there's a pin. I did a lot of pins because I'm going to have to move the whole fabric up my table to make space. I've got this sort of generally laid out, but it's going to have to be a little bit closer here. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to move my fabric up my table to make space for the 2 piece. Okay, so now I've got my number 2 piece just sort of basically set out. I can see that they're not going to overlap here, which is good. Yeah, there it is. I did the same thing with like any visible vertical line I could use. I use that for my grain of the fabric. And then I'm going to pin the number 2 piece in place. Same thing. Okay, I'm all pinned. My number 1 piece, my number 2 piece, all pinned in place. And mine are kind of overlapping, the one end of one and the other end of the other, but yours are going to be more end to end. Let's see, that's out of focus. There you go. That's going to be more end to end. That's how yours is going to look more. Also, don't forget to make the adjustments in length if you need it, here or here above the pelvis, before you lay it out. So get all that set. These for Anders are going to be about 1.5 inches too long, but I'm okay with that because he seems to be growing like a maniac. So, okay, next up is I'm going to cut it out. So you're going to start this outer edge. So you can see my large sign. That's the size I'm cutting for him. And I'm just going to cut around this outside, and I'm going to go nice and smoothly where it hits these like funny little corners. I'm just going to cut that right off. Go straight up the line right there on both of those. All right, so we're going to cut them all out. And then the next step. Okay, now I have my cutout pieces, just kind of the general outside line of the large. Now I need to cut out all of these little triangles. So you're not going to cut very deep. This is like intentionally made small so that it's inside the seam allowance. You think about like there's 1.5 centimeters of seam allowance, which is about, there. So that's going to fall inside of that. So what you do is you can either just make one little quick snip line there, which serves as your marker, or you can make the little triangle. You can cut out the whole little triangle. You can go snip and snip. Okay. So, and then each area, so you just like pull out those little pieces. Each area has different markers. So here there's there's 3, there's 1, there's 2 over here. So you just cut out all the triangles that you see. Okay. Okay, now I've got my little notches cut. 3, 1. Okay, and then, so the last step, and this is kind of interesting just with this type of fabric, since it's a woven fabric and there's not much difference between right side and wrong side, I really don't want to screw up the way I've cut. So once I take the pattern off, then I might not have a good idea of which side's the right side and which side's the wrong side. So I thought maybe I would put a piece of Scotch tape on the right side of each cut piece. You could put a sticker, you could use, a fabric marker, but I thought a piece of Scotch tape might work pretty well. Okay, so since we put right side with right side to begin with, these two are both right sides. I'm just going to put a piece of tape there, piece of tape there, flip it back over, and then I only undid the top of it. And then a little piece of tape to mark right side and right side. Okay, now I won't forget and I won't screw up. All right. Okay, so the next step is going to be starting to put the pieces together. So we're going to go back to that paper insert that gives us the instructions, and we're going to have the sewing machine ready to go and all of that. So that'll be on the next lesson.